morning, everyone. Can we start with names? Salila?
Salila,
Tony,
Jane,
Mel, Sebastian,
Jim,
Tony,
Mary.
Ross,
Terry.
And Kat and Bob.
Okay, you all know what it's all about. Give you the run through again, because giving you the run through, reminder, in case you forget. Can't teach you anything, we can't tell you anything. Understand that right from the start. When you look into what we're talking about, you'll see that, realise that nobody can ever teach you anything, and nobody can tell you anything, because there's nothing other than the one. Most of our concepts and ideas are all over the world of the so-called spiritual. There's God and everything else. And that's what we try and do. Try and look and become one with that God, or realise or recognise it. It's the other way around. God is all there is, if you like to use that term. They tell you in certain scriptures, it's the one essence, patterning, shaping, forming, expressing as everything. There is only that one. And labels like spirituality and all these other sort of things, they're all labels, and none of them fit it. But it starts off with Satchitananda, existence, consciousness, being in the Hindus. Anyone who is not existing right now, no, you realise I'm existing. Anyone who's unconscious, no, I'm conscious. Anyone who's not happy to be, no, I wouldn't be dead for quids. So you must already be the that they are talking about. That's the Mahavika, the great mantra, I am that. This is that, the tree is that, the flower is that, the bird is that, you and I are that. But we don't realise that. We don't hear that word, that, and we think it's something mysterious or something we've got to find or understand. But you know that innately in your language. When you say that's the chair, that's the carpet, that's the house, that's the flower, that's me, that's you, already know it. That is what we put labels or words on. You might start to understand when they say the word is not the thing. Words are the problem. And realise that every word you've ever spoken, or ever likely to speak, has been picked up. You've learnt them. You weren't born with any words. Nobody was born with any words. Go back and see if you can remember your birth. You can't remember your birth. Why? Because you didn't have any words to relate to it, or didn't have any concept about yourself. When people like Shakespeare said a couple of 100 years ago, 200 or 300, or whatever it was, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And when the Sakata says nothing can trouble you, and he means exactly that, not a thing can ever trouble you except in your own imagination. How many troubles have you got in your life? How many troubles you had or likely to have? You recognise they're all been imagined and believed in, and made it seem 100 times worse than what they actually are in the total functioning. Break that word imagination down to image in, and realise everything you're seeing in this room and everywhere else, you're creating a mental image about it. A mental image. Look at that mirror behind you or in the room there. What do you see in the mirror? You'll see reflections. You can't say they're not there. But go up and try and grab a reflection out of the mirror, you can't say they are there, because you can't grab a reflection. All you'll do is grab the glass. But the mirror is a very poor analogy, because the mirror needs something outside itself to reflect in it. What we're talking about, there is only the one essence, so everything is reflecting or appearing on the background of the silence and the stillness, the emptiness. That's why the Buddhists call it a cognising emptiness. Emptiness suffused with an innate intelligence or knowing. That's all cognising, and another expression of it is knowing. And he made the statement then that emptiness is form. finding out all these patterns, forms, including you and me and everything else, are forms of that emptiness. The emptiness is form. The form can be nothing other than emptiness. No, we appear solid and substantial like the earth appears, the planets and everything else appear solid and substantial. They're all just vibrating patterns of energy. Put them under a microscope and see how solid it is. Put that body under a microscope and you'll see it's made up of subatomic particles and it can be broken down into energy. So all of manifestation is what they call light or energy. That's all that light is energy. Energy is light. And the light is that innate intelligence that we're able to label, see everything, cognise everything and label it in. So there's no such thing as separate entity, as an individual or a person. Where does that idea of person come from? It's a word we've learnt or picked up, or our parents taught us, coming from a Latin word, ancient, way back somewhere along the line, meaning persona, the mask. That's all of this person we believe we are today is this mask. Mask is a conceptual image. You put a mask on, it's not your actual face, is it? Put any mask on. So we put a mask of concepts on ourselves. All these concepts we got about ourselves. Oh, I'm Bob, I'm Australian, I'm a good fellow, I'm not so good. Had a bad childhood, I'm unhappy or depressed, I'm fearful. They're all concepts. And understand this, they're all based on past events, experiences, conditioning, so they're all dead composite. You think the dead can keep up with life? It can't. Life is ever fresh, ever free, ever new. Spontaneously expressing, vibrating into different patterns, shapes and forms. And it's transient. Like they tell you in the scriptures, this manifestation is it's illusion. It's a vibrating manifestation. It's a phenomenal manifestation. Pick up your dictionary, look up the word phenomena. You'll see the definition of phenomena is that which appears to be. Appears to be. So all this, you, me and everything, are how we are appearing to others, to ourselves. And all the rest of this, in this manifestation, the trees, the flowers, the planets, the space, the sky, are all appearances. Seemingly patterns, shapes and forms, seemingly solid. But can you find any static point anywhere? You can say this is where it all begins. And also, can you find any self-nature to anything at all? When you say myself, what are you talking about? Are you talking about that essence as you are, or are you talking about the imagined conceptual images you got? So you see, it's not the true self. We're looking for self-liberation, self-realisation, self-awareness. And looking at the conceptual images we've got and trying to find it, it'll never happen. And it hasn't happened. And not until you go back and have a look, where does it all begin, where does it all appear from, where does it all come from? Am I this conceptual image that I believe myself to be? And you'll see it's all labelled in words. And have a look at the word. And you will realise that every word you've ever spoken, or ever likely to speak, has been learnt. It's been picked up along the way. Go back to before the reasoning started, when you didn't have any words, what could you say about it then? You couldn't say a word or a thing about it at all, because you had no words to express it with. But you were seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, breathing. All this thing was going on without any words. And watch a little child before it reaches ages when the capacity of reasoning develops. And see, if it wants something, it'll cry or be happy, you know. But it's not saying, I want this or want that. It hasn't got any words, but the natural instinctive functioning. Points out the hunger that's there, or the fear. We can't even call it fear at that stage, but the sensation that is not happy with, or not merging or recognising. And tantrums. He doesn't call it anger because he hasn't learned that word. He doesn't know what it is. It's just something that comes up and will go. It will move on. There is nothing fixated anywhere. There's no static point to fixate on. You realise that all this manifestation is transient, like they tell you. It's illusion and it's transient. Transient means it's constantly changing. It's not static. And when you have a look at that, realise that body you walked into the room with is not the same body that's sitting there now. And while you're sitting there even, there are thousands of cells dying in it right now, not one or two. But there are big changes going on, thousands of cells, food being digested, all sorts of things happening in that body, constantly changing. But we still identify it with the same I we've taken to believe we are. It's happening to me or I. Well, what happened before you learnt that word? You don't even realise or know. But just take the word off right now and see what's happening without the word. And you'll realise without the word you're still knowing what everything is. You're still cognising the different pattern shapes and forms. Look around the room without labelling it. And you'll know that you're not seeing an homogeneous blob there. You're seeing what seemingly appears to be separate things. But can you break them down from that natural actuality? Take this body, for instance, you say, oh, it's my body. But you know it's not your body. Because you say, my house, my coat, my car, my shirt, are you the coat? Are you the car, are you the house? You're not. Maybe you're not the body. The same thing when you say, my mind. Show me a thing called mind if you can. And you realise there's nothing concrete there or substantial to say, this is mine, all this is mine. And you recognise there's no such thing as mind apart from thought. Thinking is mind, what we call mind. And if you were a thought, as we believe we are with a thought up there, this me, I'm Bob, this me, that's all thoughts, concepts. We believe that's what I am. If you were that thought, the primary thought is the thought I am, the sense of presence expressing through the mind as that particular thought. The primal vibration, the movement of energy. If you were that thought, you'd be frightened of losing sight of it, because if you think you're the mind and the mind is thought, and you lost the thought, that'd be the end of you. But you gladly give it up every night when you go to sleep. If you were that thought, you'd hang on to it, wouldn't want to lose it, you wouldn't be fearful of going to sleep. So you realise you're not the thought. Not that thought or any other thought. You're not the good person or the bad person or the fearful or anxious one or the unhappy one or the one who's been abused and had all this trauma and drama. All these concepts we take on and believe in, and they're seemingly real. Aren't they all based on past events and experience? What's happening to you right now while you're sitting in this room? And you're not indulging in any concepts of thought if you're listening, just hearing. Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. Is it a trouble? Is it a worry? Is it a concern then? No. When the but comes in, what do? But if, but what if, why, how? You translate to some conceptual image based on a past events and experiences, a dead image. And the dead image can't keep up with life. Life is constantly ever fresh and new. And you are the life. And people down through the ages and the scriptures have told you that. Christ told you that. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. People thought he's talking about himself. Oh, he's the way. He's the truth. He wasn't talking about himself. He was talking about that sense of presence, that word, that primary thought. I am is the way. Like Moses said on the mountain when he was on the mountain. And he had all these people to look after him down in the mountain while they were waiting for him to hear something to try to keep him at peace with each other. And these intuitive thoughts or feelings came up to him, which he wrote on the tablets, the 10 Commandments. This is all story, of course. They say it's true, but it's not. Nobody here can tell you it's true. It's all imagined. And he asked himself, who shall I say? I've got to go back and tell them these people commands, but who shall I say sent me? They won't take my word for it. And the thought came to him there and then, tell them I am sent you. I am is my name. And then he realised, I am that I am. That I am he was thinking was no different from the sense of presence of the I am that he is. And can't each and every one of you in this room say the same thing? Anyone who doesn't know I am. But you might know I am as that conceptual image. The good person, the bad person, the unhappy person, or the individual, or the fearful one, or the anxious one. But just as that sense of presence. And realise presence is this immediacy. We'll break it down into pre-sense. Before any conceptual senses, labelled senses have come onto it, without any senses. In that pre-sense, are you unaware? And you realise, no, I'm not unaware. That awareness is there right now. So you are that presence awareness. Not putting any labels onto that awareness, because you can't grasp it with the concept. Nobody can tell me what awareness is. It's just a label you've taken on. You believe that is this entity without questioning and looking into it a bit further. But understand the words, every word you've ever spoken, ever like a word like it to speak has been learned. But the word's not the left, not the thing. There is no word that is the thing. It's all concepts. Take the word water. If you think it's the thing, try and drink the word. Will it quench your thirst? Can you swim in the word? Can you wash in the word? Will you drown in the word? You can't. The word fire. Does it burn your mouth if you speak of it? Can you cook with it? Can you heat yourself with it? You can't. So what's this word I or me? You've taken it to be what you are, but if you ever look at it, you might say it's not so. It's just another word that is of no use whatsoever, except as an expression to identify with. I is not you. I is not the other. It forms this vibration or sense of separation. And in the totality there is no separation whatsoever. It is the one essence, patterning, shaping, forming and experiencing as everything, and you are that. Everything. And look at that word thing, label. This is a thing, the carpet's a thing, the mirror's a thing, the chair's a thing, the leaves on the tree are things. You and I are things. All this manifestation are made up of things. The basic screen, or the space, the silence, the stillness, is no thing. So everything appears like reflections appear in the mirror. Everything is real in its reality is no thing. Can something come from no thing? You realise that something cannot come from no thing, so all this manifestation, that's all it is. Seeming things, seeming appearance, patterning, shape and form, dream-like illusions, like they tell you, which we've taken to be real. And that's why I can't teach you anything, I can't tell you anything. What can one reflection in that mirror tell the other reflection in the mirror? Nothing whatsoever. So what can I tell you if there is at all? When you're saying I also, which I is right? You realise everyone in this room says I. How many eyes are there in the room? I'm not talking about the eyes in your head. You realise there's only that one I, only that one concept or word, I. I put the life onto it as the amness, the beingness. Amness is part of the word to be, verb to be, the oneness. So it's not even one. That's another term we use to describe, but there's no word that'll actually fit it. One implies other than one, or two. There's not even the one. It's the no thing expressing as everything. So recognising that, what might you be? Who is superior to you? Who is inferior to you? Who is separate from you? There is no thing that is separate or apart from that essence that you are, though it's appearing. And it's broken down into all these patterns so it can express through. Do you think it'd know itself? Or be able to say or do anything if there was nothing seemingly apart from it to express it as or in? But it's in all the pattern, shapes and forms are dreamlike pattern, shapes and forms which enable it to be identified, and all this play of consciousness or expressions of awareness to go on. Hinduism, they call it Shiva and Shakti. Shiva, the static aspect, the one essence. Shakti, his partner, is depicted as the female aspect. Shakti dances and the world appears. On the static aspect is the base in which it appears on, like the mirror is the static aspect, seemingly static aspect in which all the reflections appear. Space is the static aspect in which all the appearances appear on. Shakti dances and vibrates, in other words, it dances a vibration. And the world appears, that's all this world is. Well, they call it the dance of Shiva. They bring it down to its simplicity. We've complicated it, and we're still complicating it. See, science, physics and all the rest of it going along trying to find the answer. They never found it yet, and they never will find it yet, but they explain, understanding and expressing a lot of things. And they help the search going, because we break it down into this, and that, and something else, and something more. And the next thing, and the next thing, the next thing will be it. But I don't do that anymore. I bring it back to its basic simplicity. There's only that. There is nothing that is not that. Doesn't matter how it pattern shapes and expresses and forms. It's still only that. And knowing it as that, I am absolutely certain that it's transient like everything else, even like this body. It's going to change. It's not going to be static and the same. I'm not going to come to some state where it's going to be wondrous and amazing and a great ecstatic state where it's going to around a big smile on my face all the time and loving this and loving that. It's bound to change. Just like the very breath I'm taking is changing. I'm breathing in fresh air right now and I'm breathing out the stale. Just like the heart is beating. It's expanding and contracting. It's not static. The body temperature, the sensations that come up with that, and it's translated as cool, hot, warm, or something. And if those things weren't there, what would there be to be expressed in this world? Does nature know anything about the heat? As the earth is rolling around the sun right now. It'll be very cold out there in places where it'll be very hot, it'll be very dry, and whatever. The earth doesn't know anything about it. The sun doesn't know anything about it. That's just the way it functions and patterns. What has happened to us? We've taken on this when we learnt words. And realised that you didn't know any words till about 2.5. Look back in your life and see what we are saying before that. Can you remember it? You can conceptualise and say, oh, when I was born, this happened and that happened. Say it's imprinted in the mind or somewhere other like that. Is it the actual? Go back and see. And then the things that have happened along in your life, they've been seeming very actual when they were on, dramas and traumas. Now, years and years later, how real are they? If we haven't let them carve an image or an engravement on the mind, on the thoughts and the thinking process, you're free of that. What is it? Hasn't the body healed up if it was wounded and damaged and things like that? It doesn't. It might carry the scar, but the actual thing that happened disappears if we're not relating to it and keeping it there all the time. What happened? We learnt words when we were 2. And with those words, the capacity of reasoning came about. For that little child's not breathing anything, he's just functioning spontaneously, doing what is necessary to do, or feels necessary to do, or whether it's necessary or not. The activity makes it happen. But now we've learnt words, the capacity of reasoning. And words can be very useful, but they can be very self-destructive also, because you realise how this mind functions, how the word is the vibration. And see that in your thoughts, how thought functioning. It's always functioning in the interrelated pairs of opposites. You're either in the past, which is memory, or the future, which is anticipation or imagination, or somewhere within that range. Have a look at it. It's either good or bad, like Shakespeare tells you. It's either happy, sad, positive, negative, past or future. Look at your mind and see if it functions any other way. Peace and joy, or sadness and unhappiness. That's the way the mind vibrates. It's a vibration of energy, and each vibration and the word is formed, and the words are found in the opposites: good, bad, pleasant, painful, happy, sad, loving, hate. And that's the boundaries. The word, instead of being just a description progress, has now become the boundary. Good, clunk, that's it. Bad, clunk, fair, pleasant, painful, happy, sad. And we've encased ourselves in conceptual words. We've built a cage of concepts around it. And we've locked this believed in entity in the cage. And you put a bird in a cage, keep it there for 15, 20 years or more, and open the door, it won't realise there's a door there for some time. Sometime later it might realise the door, or just by accident find its way out. But it won't want to fly out because it hasn't seen it for one. We've done the same thing. We've encased ourselves in this cage of concepts, not realising the cage is a fiction. Cage is made up of concepts, words, ideas, images. And it's a fiction. And that concept of the capacity of reasoning, which words like I and me, and then we can't do much with I or me, so we add to it these events, experiences and conditions have happened to us. I'm Bob, the Australian. I've had a bad childhood. I'm not good enough. My parents tell me I'm Bob, I'm a human being, I'm a person. And I'm a good fellow, I'm not so good. Or I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do that. All these concepts are put onto this conceptual Bob. Now it's got some seeming substance, because the I of itself, what substance you put on I? Any solidity to it? Can you describe that I? You can't until you put concepts on it. So now I've got this conceptual image, I'm Bob, I'm this, that and the other. And that becomes the self-centre. The reference point, as the self-centre of the self, where all the selfishness starts from, that self-centre. Self-centeredness, everything, a reference point, everything is related to the self. Or the ego. And that's all this ego is, a conceptual image. Me, Bob, the Australian good fellow, is an egoic image I've got about myself. And I'll tell you that in the scriptures too, that ego is the only problem you've ever had or will ever likely to have. And they say you've got to sublimate it some way, you've got to stamp on it, you've got to kill it, you've got to get rid of it, throw it out. And we try to do that. What would we be trying to do it? Only the egoic image that you think is real, we're trying to get rid of the image. And they tell you it's like trying to wash away blood with blood. It doesn't happen. So there's no good relating to that image. And that's all it is, a mental image, and a dead image at that, based on past events and experience and conditioning. So everything becomes relative to this image. And isn't relative relationship or relativity? And isn't relativity dualism? And what are we looking at? We're looking at non-duality, where the duality and dualism and non-duality have disappeared. Where there's just that equilibrium there. There's no duality and no non-duality. It can't be separate, just the same as you can't separate this body from the elements. The body's made of air, earth, water, fire, space. Separate yourself from the air, earth, water, fire, space. If you can, you can't. So while we're relating to this egoic image, we're going to be in trouble. Instead of trying to sublimate the ego and get rid of it with the ego, have a look and see if there's anything there. Investigate. We tell you, and other people tell you, the false cannot stand up to investigation. If something is false that we're believing in, investigate it, go into it, really have a look. And if it's the truth, you won't be able to get rid of it. But if it is false and you really question it, it'll fall apart. Because there's nothing substantial there for a place there where it can stand. No static point anywhere. So we ask you to look at this ego. If something comes up, and now instead we've got this ego, everything becomes relative to that. Something comes up and I like it. How do you know? Well, I've had this before and it's good. And what do we want to do? We want to keep the good things we like. We don't want to let them go. We want more and more of them. Keep the good things there. Not realising that they're transient. No matter how much you love them, no matter how much you want to keep them there, they're going to change. They might die, they might leave you, they might move on. Something will happen just the same as your body is changing, so are they, and so is everything around you. This house is changing constantly. This, down the road, the things in the road are constantly changing. Out there in space, everything is changing. Nothing's static. But we don't want those things to go. We want to keep it there because that's where the happiness is, in those things, what we think it is. We don't want the things to go, so what do? We try and keep them there. Got to hang on to this one as much as possible. Keep it there. I want it, I like it. Not realising no matter how much you love them, they're going to change. So what do we do to keep them there? Trying to keep them there is resistance. We're resisting it from going. And when you are in resistance, you are in conflict. You're in conflict with that thing because it's trying to move on, you're trying to keep it there. Isn't that a conflict? And the conflict makes you unhappy, makes you uneasy, makes you anxious, fearful, depressed, guilty, jealous, envious. All conflict. That anxiety, fear, depression, self-pity and everything are uneasiness. And another word for uneasiness is dis-ease. So while we're struggling this, we're on resistance, conflict and dis-ease. And isn't that what our body's going on all the time? There's always some conflict and resistance and some dis-ease coming up and anxiety and fear. Something comes up and I don't like. I don't want this one. It's there and I don't want it, so what do? I resist it again. This time trying to get rid of it. Instead of trying to hang on it, I remember resisting it for its opposite. Trying to get rid of it. Again in conflict. And again uneasy about it. That's where our life is full of psychological suffering. This conflict is continually going on. If you want to live without it, get rid of it, you've got to recognise it and see the truth. It's a fiction. So it's me, everything becomes relative to this conceptual image or ego. Now wouldn't it be imperative that you had to look at this reference point, this ego, and see if it is real? See what I'm relating to, this me, is what I actually am. And we ask you to investigate along these lines. Everybody is seeing right now, everybody is hearing right now. Isn't that a fact? Everybody is tasting, touching, smelling. The functioning is going on. Heart beating, breathing, hair and fingernails growing, all spontaneously, all naturally and everything. So you're seeing right now. And don't you realise it's the same seeing you had when you woke up this morning? Same seeing you had last week, last year. It's the same seeing that's been going on all the time. The seeing hasn't changed. But the content has changed. What you were seeing this morning, what you were seeing yesterday, last week, and what you're seeing right now, the content is constantly changing. The same with the hearing. Open your eyes this morning, the hearing was there. If it had been called loudly in deep sleep, you'd have heard it. The hearing wasn't too far away. You think the hearing has changed, but the hearing hasn't changed either. It's the same hearing you had. All right, there's the hearing and the seeing going on, that's a fact, isn't it? Well, ask yourself this. Is my eye telling me I see? My eye is not saying, look at this, Bob, look at that, that's good, or that's bad. And I realise from that my eye can't say anything at all. It can't think, it can't speak, it can't do anything, but it is the instrument through which the seeing is happening. And that instrument, that seeing is translated by the thought, I see. How would you translate or recognise a thing without the thought, I see? But what's that thought? It's not a pure seeing anymore. It's not a pure seeing. Now it's me, Bob the Australian. The conceptual image I've got about thinks I'm seeing. It's me that's seeing. Same with the hearing. Hearing is happening, hearing is happening right now, and you realise the same seeing has been going, hearing is going on all the time. We think that hasn't changed, but they think that's changing, but it hasn't changed either. The same hearing, the content again is changing. It's the content that's continually changing, the vibrating patterns of energy, the actual seeing and hearing. My ear doesn't say, listen to this, Bob. Listen to that, that's good, it can't. But it's translated by the thought I hear. Again, not a pure hearing anymore. It's the conceptual image that Bob thinks is hearing. So the seeing and hearing are happening. Look at it a bit further. Seeing is happening. Seeing through the eye understand. But can the eye actually see? Thought I see, can the thought, it's translated by the thought, but can that thought I see actually see, to prove that the thought, what it's translated by, is conceptual image? Can the thought I see actually see? Well, prove that to yourself. Close your eyes and look around the room and see what you can see in this room, what objects you can actually see with the eyes closed. You know what the objects are and you can imagine some of them in your mind, but you can't actually see them with the eyes closed. So you recognise that thought I see, can't see. It's the things happening through the eye and the thought I see, can't see. Put your hands over your ears and do the same thing and you realise that the thought I hear, can't hear. You recognise you're not unaware right now, so you must be aware. Is the thought I am aware or I am unaware? Is that the entity, the thought up entity doing it? Or is that what's happening as translated again by the thought? The thought I choose, we think we choose our thoughts. Why would you have an unhappy or miserable or anxious thought if you could choose the thought? So you realise it's thought I see, thought I hear, thought I'm aware, thought I choose, can't see, hear, be aware or choose. The egoic image, the conceptual image, can't do anything at all. And have a look at that. That life essence goes out of the body. What can a corpse do? You got the eyes, you got the ears, you got the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, all the organs there. But of themselves they can't do anything at all without that life essence. So what's doing it all? Is this thinking conceptual image you believe that's still running the show and doing all this can do it anything? Without that life essence? It can't, never can, never will. So give credit where credit is due. Give credit to the life essence that's breathing you, beating your heart, growing your hand. Throw the little why, the conceptual image, out the window. It never done anything, it never can and never will. Drop it. Let it be without. See, learn those words too. We think all this thinking is going on within. The seeing, the hearing, the tasting is going within. What if you put it without? Instead of seeing it in, put it without, outside. We use that word without, we don't take to anything when we realize. That'd mean you'd be without thought, without feeling, without emotion. and realise that with the air, the prana, until you breathe in, the life essence comes in. That's where the life essence comes into the body. Go back to when you were born and look at through the umbilical cord of the mother. The life essence came from the mother into the umbilical cord of the fetus. And that's the life essence that's been functioning ever since. And that's where it's aligned the breath with that breathing, abdominal breathing. And when you breathe in a thought, you take it within. You inspire it. Instead of letting it out, we leave it there and let the breath go out all around it and that thought's still there. What happens if you let the thought, as they tell you in the scripture, let the thought ride on the breath? Just let it go out with the breath. Then it's without. Then you are without that thought. But we don't, while we keep it there and leave it there, we're beating ourselves up with the word or the thought continually. And it'll go on forever and ever. So when they ask yourself what's wrong with right now if I don't think about it, you need to look and see, if you pause the thought, be without the thought for a moment, what can you say without the thought? Can you say it's good, bad, pleasant, painful, happy, sad, or regard? And where all the good, inventive and useful thoughts come from? Don't they tell you that in the words too? I had a great inspiration. Einstein says that, he had a great inspiration. He thought of these things, tried to work something out for years and years, couldn't. Went to sleep one night and the inspiration came to him. And then the other people had a great inspiration, wrote this book or did this and did that or invented this. But you realise when you break it down that it came in with the prana, the life essence you breathe in from the atmosphere, the intelligence, there's one life essence, is what you are, that's forming this body, patterning it and living it and expressing through it. And then doesn't I am that take on a different meaning? You're not just mouthing some words, you're mouthing something that you're actually knowing. But knowing that I am. Can you say you are not? You can't. That's what we point to. That's what we ask you to look at. And that's what you realise, it's not anything new. It's there for each and every one of us. If there's a movement there to have a look and investigate it. And you'll find, like I found, in spite of myself, it brought me to it. And the belief that I was this person, I was the great this, that, and that, I was going to do this, that, and that. It brought me to my knees, brought me into the gutter. But it also took me out of it. By me starting to recognise, to open up, instead of being closed-minded and shutting everything off. I was able to open that mind up. Be open and aware, and the recognition was there. Recognise. They call it the cognising emptiness, not that we cognise emptiness, but the cognising is that natural function going on, or knowing. That's why the Buddha could say emptiness is form. And form is nothing but the emptiness. In the cognising emptiness, with the chatter going on, everything, we lose sight of the actual cognising of it. And in the losing sight of what needs to happen, that needs to be recognised. And that word recognition or recognising takes on a different meaning again when you see what it's pointing to. So there are others here who'll be able to point it out in different ways, probably expressed. It can be expressed in thousands of different ways. And so each one's own experiencing. Not the experiencer or the experience, but the experiencing will translate the experience and generally translate it into the experiencer and the experience, but just be the pure experiencing, the pure seeing, the pure tasting, the touching, the smelling. Before I see, I think, I hear, where you're dividing. Start living from that and see what changes, whatever. So get into it. all sitting in that silence and stillness. Now, what's coming up?
I was just thinking how amazing it is that the functioning brings you back to where you never left. It takes you on this journey into the knowledge of separation and duality, and then it brings you back to where you never left. And yet you go on this merry chase. You go on these little pathways, these little stories, these little jewel stories, and then you come back to where you never left.
You know that, what are you going to do? Let it happen. I take into the rough and the smooth, the good, the bad, or whatever, but it'll change.
Absolutely.
Mm.
It's been an interesting journey. Interesting journey.
Is there a difference between the state of, I don't know how to call it, full presence or beingness? Is there a difference between that state of really being compared with the moments when, as example, when we just play? If I'm just playing with kids and there is no thought, I'm just playing, or I'm just painting, and in those spaces there is no thoughts. There is just being and something is being done. Like if I paint, or when I do art in general, there is no thought about I want to do this, I'm not trying to do any art, it's just painting.
Yeah.
Is it the same thing?
Of course it is. No difference, no discrimination. If you're discriminating, you're separated. See, tools is the one thing. There's no one-ended stick. Each stick's got two ends onto it. So when it's a thin end or the thick end, instead of discriminating and say, I like this, I don't like that, see it all as the one, just as you're doing now. It's the play, it's the fear, it's the anger, it's everything. It'll lose its intensity, and you can't get the same intensity into it if you're not relating to the conceptual image, me.
So is it the same than those moments that we say, I was lost in the moment, or I was lost in the action? This idea of I was lost in it? Is it the same again?
Yeah, well, who was lost? Only that believed in the eye. If you haven't put that eye on, what were you lost? Did you disappear? You stopped breathing? Your heart stopped beating? Or did you go? You weren't lost at all, only conceptually.
The ego was lost. It wasn't there. In this moment of inspiration, or being in the zone, or being fully with the activity, with 5 senses wide open, there is no space anymore in the attention to construct the false image and translate everything into the image. When you are in the creative act, or you are with children, or you are fully absorbed even in listening of a wonderful music or anything, that activity, that attention is 100% engaged with the environment. There is no attention left to create that false self-center, which will translate that this is happening to me, it shouldn't be happening the way it does. So in absence of that translation, or that cloud that says I, this is me, this is my, this is, you basically lost. Yeah, the I is lost, the ego is lost. There is no ego, because ego is just a mental activity. When the mental activity, the construct of I am my past, I am my body, mind, whatever, if that activity is absent, ego is absent.
And what happens is a travelling lighter. It's a travelling lighter, same as when you're painting or you're playing with kids and you're not taking up all your energy in mental constructs. There's a sense of travelling lighter, you know. because you're not utilising all that energy on the image you have about yourself. So there's a lightness of being, a lightness of being, and it's only a pointer, but it's you know, it's exhausting taking up all that energy on, I don't know how to.
Yeah, and you know, everyone knows that. Like, you know that when you are obsessing, well, we all kind of been there or still are there, obsessing about ourselves. What people think about me? Am I doing right? Should I be doing something else? When you are happy and when you are engaged in this creative act, you don't really have any space for self-obsession. You're not even taking credit for what is going on. You not even have the commentary, oh, I'm doing well or I'm not doing well. There's no self-obsession. There is no idea about this is happening to me. There is no commentary going on. And that commentary is the only ego as we know it. There is no physical thing called ego. There is nothing. Ego is believed into existence, and it comes up from mental activity of taking credit for actions and the whole past of taking credit for actions and relating to that image. So this is actually a taste of the freedom. Like people said, oh, I had an opening. There was no me, it was just activity. Everyone has it. Everyone has it in the morning before the download happens of who I am, what I'm going to do next. Everyone has it in a moment when the desire gets fulfilled. It doesn't mean that desire gets fulfilled, so I'm happy because I got what I wanted. No, I'm happy because I have no desires anymore. And in the absence of desires, there is no me clinging and wanting. So there is fresh breath. Traveling lighter, yeah. And also the moment of completely forgetting ourselves in the creative act. There is no construct that is taking credit or translating. Those are also moments of joy, like swimming in the ocean and whatever, feeling the water, feeling the sun. Bob is often giving an example of walking on the beach and feeling connected with all the elements and totally divided attention between the five senses. There's not much going on into the commentary. Those are moments that are blissful, that are just natural way of being, just like animals are being, without that mental clouds of, oh, I don't want this is wrong, or I'm not that yet, I have to become someone, or I have to figure it out. There is nothing wrong. Yeah, the best way Nisargadatta described it, nothing wrong. The moments when there is nothing wrong are the moments when there is no ego, because ego is the cloud that makes everything wrong. Not this, not like that. It's just a commentary.
But in that recognition, you're back in conscious contact. So in the recognition that you've got trapped into the story again, the minute you recognise it, you're back in conscious contact. And I know what you mean about when you're painting or you're playing with children. I sing, you know, and people often come up after I sing and say, oh, that was really good, and I think, who are they talking about? You know, it's like a real, I don't know how to explain it. It's like a...
It just showed up.
Yeah, it's funny. And playing with children and seeing their spontaneity and and that's what Bob said all along. We've known this all along since we were little children. We've known this, and so we want more of it. That's why we're here.
Well, that's what I say. Who could be lost? Start from the fact that you are already that. If there is only that, who was ever lost, or what was ever lost? And every one of you here and now are that essence, life. You know, the life. Is the life out of it of you? Not at all. As I say, I once was lost, but now I'm found. Now I'm found. Not tomorrow, not last week. I was blind and cannot see. Take the blinkers off your eyes, the conceptual images, and you see. See without the concepts. And as I say, start from the fact you're already that. And instead of trying to struggle, trying to get rid of this false ego, which won't happen, discard what is blocking the seeing. What concept or idea or image? Put it out. Get rid of it.
But there is another aspect with what you are pointing out, Sebastian. That's kind of interesting because, on one hand, the absence of ego is just life is waving or is dancing, is doing its thing. But another thing you say, when you're utterly present, completely present, the attention doesn't really go out anywhere, it doesn't engage, it's just back on itself. That's a different quality, is also absence of ego. But it's also the presence gets so much of the attention that is overwhelming, that is almost blissful in its own presence. So if the above states, then we are looking at something that is beyond both of the states. You know, the state of pure presence with no distractions, or the state of a complete absence of taking credit entity and just distractions, just the dance of life. And now both of those states are happening in that space-like awareness. So this is the moment when the self-aware universe, when the realization of that spontaneous activity happens, when you kind of part of the attention steps out of the dream and is witnessing the dream, like there is a knowing about being in the zone, knowing about painting or playing with children. Those are usually just, you know, like kind of a hints, because the intention of life is to express itself, is to dance itself, wave itself. So it will right away swim back into expression. But the moments when it actually kind of step out and just becomes aware of itself. But again, those are just, you know, waving glimpses. Those are also changing phenomena. The changing phenomena of recognition out of recognition, seeing the knowing of its own activity and falling back into the expression.
Like watching an action figure, really.
Yeah, and as Jane says, the moment she uses conscious contact, it is a 12-step description because a lot of people, Bob got to know by 12-step program. It is about coming back to that life essence. So the moment you recognize that there is some activity going on, you're obviously witnessing them from outside of the activity. So you are already beyond the mind. You are already pure consciousness, aware of the movement inside of you or outside, wherever, just the movement. So you are already being a stillness, aware of the activity. So this is what she calls conscious contact, or we can call it a moment of awakening or recognition or whatever.
Or the great switcheroo. You're switching back from the content and back in the context. So you know, there's the train zipping past and then you're back on the station. That's another good way of saying it.
It is. It's beautiful.
It's a good pointer.
Good painting too. Good mental image. Yeah, it is. It's helpful.
It's interesting because it doesn't matter where you go looking for a question.
Yeah.
It's still coming from the mind. So there's nothing. You can't really ask a question.
Exactly right.
There's nothing to say, nothing to do.
The question is the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Dwell on it, Bob.
They cancel each other out then.
Yeah.
Yeah. He sometimes says about the whole bag of buts. Oh, he mentioned it today in a spiel. And, you know, you've got this innate knowing that you are. And then you go to your head, but what if, but what if? This is all coming from the whole doubter personality, the doubter aspect that comes and have a story. But it is necessary, as it seems, to exhaust it first.
Yeah.
It seems so. I mean, not for everyone. There are people who gracefully just transit into this realization with maturation process, with getting older, or with just interacting with the big family where there's a lot of love, and it just happens. So it doesn't really have to be this way, that you have to become seeker, go to the head, have 1,000 questions, struggle, and just break this wall with the thinking, and then give up on it, and then go back to the, oh my gosh, home you never left. So I actually, there is a friend visiting us, she is not a seeker, and this is just so wonderful to see people who didn't really have to leave the heart and enter the head to start the spiritual search and exhaust all that conceptual dilemmas to just step out of the thinking, back again to the life and as it is expressing moment to
I
moment.
have a lot of friends like that.
Yeah.
And
A lot of people, the elderly people that I'm helping, they are like this. I mean, it's just happening. They travel light without having to question the reality of the dream. It's
And I love what Nisargadatta says too. Some fruit on a tree goes plop and it's falls off the tree, it's ripe, ready to eat. Some fruit takes a long time to ripen, and it's all good. It's still all good fruit. It's just, some ripen quicker than others.
As far as that, I was just reading about that, but I think the way I understood that was that the fruit will fall, doesn't take long to fall, but it takes a long time to mature before it falls. So in other words, like, you don't just look at when it falls, it's ripe, but it's taken a long time before it ripens.
What we've got to realise is that even time's a mental concept. We believe in on time or waiting on time. What time is there if you don't think about it? Is there a past if you don't think about it? You can't say there's a past unless you think about it. Is there a future if you don't think about it? Just say I was in the past, I'll say try and actually live a moment ago. Try and live last week or yesterday. You can't. Try and live tomorrow. You can't anticipate. You can anticipate and imagine what you're going to do when you leave here. But can you live a moment in the future? You can't. The anticipation, imagination is going on right now, any time at all, because you can't tell me what you thought a minute ago now unless you recall it. And you can't imagine or anticipate anything unless you're moving away from this present moment into some future time. So past and future are concepts, images. And people tell you you've got to try and stay in the now. Try and get away from this momentary now moment, which is spontaneous. When does now begin? Have a look. Well, when does it start? Well, you've got to start starting right now. You're not talking about now yesterday, it wouldn't be now. But what is the now? As you're saying now even, it's ending. The word ends and it's finished. But it begins again now again. It's all spontaneous, got no duration. So the 20 or 30 years you search doesn't matter a thing at all, because it was now all the time. Seemingly long, seemingly extended, seemingly short duration, but it's not. So all those worry and concerns drop away.
So it seems to be the ripening process, and this is only in a dream, because 20, 30 years didn't matter. 20 years, 20, 30 years happening now. We are kind of creating the whole past with the whole ideas that, I'm slowly opening, I'm slowly getting this, this drops away, slowly. This is all happening now. This is the story that we have now. But right now, if you ask yourself what's wrong with right now, if you don't think about it, there is no fruit, there is no ripening, there is no concepts, and there is no problem. And there is no one who needs to ripen, no one who needs to get it, because without the thought, you already that. You already the nothing. Because you only have to have the thought, to have the idea that there is a me who is in the process of ripening and who is slowly getting or slowly discarding things. This is all thinking. The moment the thinking ceases, there is no ripes, there is no fruits, there is nothing. It's just this moment as it is. But it is helpful analogy for the individual. If the individual still strongly believes itself to existence and it strongly believes in its own authenticity, that kind of gives an individual kind of a hope, because individual is totally time dependent. Because without time, of course, there is no possibility to create the mental image, because without time there is no past. So who am I without the past? I can't tell. There is nothing without the past. So I love how limited all the pointers are, because if the pointer was it, everybody would have got it a long time ago. But every analogy has limitation. Analogy of mirrors, analogy of ripening, of fruits, of falling. They're all rooted in time to start with. They're all having an image, a mental representation. So they're all limited. They have to be. We're using dualistic language to express something that is before the language or underlying the language. And every language has an image. And
I
we
remember sitting here in 1988 going, what the hell are they talking about, you know? And trying to get it with the mind, even though I knew, even though I'd been told and even though it had been pointed to, that it wasn't in the mind. And I'd been told I wasn't the me, and I'd been told that the me was the past, and I'd been told that all these things, and I think I got it, and then I hadn't got it, and then I think I got it, and then I hadn't got it. And like you said in the very beginning, it was the mind exhausting itself.
Yeah.
The mind, you know, exhausting itself, looking for all these scenarios. In the end, it just gives up.
Yeah.
And you're trying to make sense of everything.
It gives up. In the end, it just gives up. Because there's no more questions.
Yeah.
So everything, like you say, every point is limited, but yeah, but at the time,
That's part of the play.
it's all part of the play, yeah, and it's all part of that unique pattern of energies journey, you know, because, yeah, it's all unique.
Yeah, and then apparently, if we say about if we kind of adopt the time just for the heck of the story and the beauty of the expression, then we come to the point where the identity was constructed also in seeming time. When Bob says you are 2.5, you have enough words to have mental representations or symbolic language and create images, then you start create the image of yourself, and then you start relating. So 2.5, it seems in time. So the whole construct was conditioned alongside with growing up and adopting more words and selecting out of this homogeneous blob more of the labels, believing them into existence. So then the ripening, it seems like the reverse process of discarding, getting less of that weight, traveling lighter and lighter until, oh my God, back to the womb. But this is just a story, because this is just a dream. It's just what an extraordinary idea. The dream as a lucid dream, you can actually see it for what it is and just leave it and just love it as it is, because it could have been nothing. And in fact, there is nothing. We just kind of collectively project that magnificent expression out of plain nothing or cognizing intelligent nothing. So the stories are to be totally appreciated and loved, because the stories are how life is actually showing itself to itself, how it has the glimpse of its omnipotence, omnipresence, omniscience, of its magnificence. And without creating the individual who is relating everything to itself, the story can't exist. You know, there is a little bit of an appearance of a mental image of the picture, when you know the story as a story, but without the past, nothing has a meaning. Like Mary was saying, the mind is constantly trying to get depth and meaning to everything. How magnificent when you see it, of course, because when you get trapped by it and you buying into it, it can be tremendously traumatic.
Yep.
But then, without that trauma and without that suffering, the possibility to actually see through the dream is very rare or non-existent. You have to fall asleep to wake up. There's no other way.
That's right. Back to the beginning. That's a good one. You have to fall asleep to wake up.
That's interesting too, because sorry.
That's okay.
Somewhere in one of the Bibles it talks about Adam falling asleep. Nowhere does it say does he wake up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's so. Yeah.
What were you going to say, Bob?
Yeah, we've been talking a bit about images. As I got to tell you, nothing can trouble you except your own imagination. In the Bible it tells you, thou shalt not make unto thyself any graven images.
Tells you everything.
People think they're talking about worshipping stone idols and cats and all that sort of thing. But it's the graven image we engrave in our heads, keeping them there, and that are troubling us.
Mm.
Imagine, nothing can trouble you except your own image, imagination, what you image in.
And it's not that we should or we could take the images out of our head. That's impossible. That's part of the play. But just recognizing them, that's enough. Because, yeah, that's when it's then when it becomes really beautiful instead of being threatening.
Yep, you're standing on the platform and just watching the trains.
Yeah.
Don't get in.
And I used to love what Bob used to say to me too, just in that cognising of emptiness, be warm towards it, love it, give it a little wink and a nod, you know, love it, you know.
And that's how to take it out, to have an affectionate awareness of being. That's the being, knowing, loving the being, affectionate. Good.
And again, not that you can choose it, but with the recognition, it just naturally opens up.
Well, could you talk a bit more about? I just can't get my head wrapped around this past time. You know, the way I understand it is there's no time and space in the dream, right? I mean, sorry, there is time and space in the dream, but because the dream is not real, obviously, you're saying there is no time and space. Is that the way it is, or am I missing out something, or what?
Well, this is the waking dream.
Yeah.
If there's no space in the dream, there's no space in. There's no time in the dream. There's no time in this one.
Sorry?
I say there's no time in the dream. This is a waking dream. There's no time here. I say, is there a past if you don't think about it?
No.
Huh?
Well, if you don't think about it, nothing happens. Nothing.
Yeah.
All right. If nothing happens, you're not in the past or the future. You're just with the nothing that's happening. There's a seeming past and future, a seeming concept of time, duration, but there's
So
not.
there's a seeming of
seeming.
past and future, present, and whatever.
Yeah,
It seems that way because nothing is really happening. Yeah, I
that's
understand.
all part of the manifestation. All images.
So it all depends which way you look at it. You know.
Yes. Yeah, you look at it.
Depends which angle you look at it.
And then look at it and see, recognise, see the truth of it, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. What are you free of from? The belief in all these images, belief about time and concepts and everything like that. Question those beliefs. See if they're real or not.
And also have a taste whenever you can to see. Taste, like, okay, you're interacting with life and you know that past exists only when you think about it.
Yes.
Try and live as if there was no past, as if you are actually discovering things for the first time, as everything is fresh and new, as you don't know what everything is. Take a cup and think, oh yeah, I know what it is because of the past, because I've seen it before, I'm recognizing it. But just that childlike curiosity of like lifting a thing and, yeah, okay, if I didn't really know the past, wow, I can see it fresh and new. It becomes interesting. The life gets new taste to it when we drop off the past with the assumptions and with the conclusions. Of course, not when you're driving a car or whatever. I mean, just be practical about it. But it's a really sweet thing to experiment with that pointer, to play with it, to just be really childlike, be curious about the world and see it fresh and new without the past. Without the labels. Bob often says, try and see things without the labels. Because you look around and you right away label, like we label people. And we have, this person didn't make a good impression on me, so I'll be locked with that concept for the rest of my life. Never give them another chance to show that I was wrong. Or this, I don't like this color or this car or this food. Never experimenting. Children experiment all the time. They're curious. They're not locked in their conceptual frame of strong opinions or judgments. They're just free about life. And that's...
we base our present decisions on the past, don't we? Really?
Yeah, we do. It's nothing wrong. To a certain extent, this is a learning process, and it is completely unconscious process. Like the animals do that too. Like if they learn that the stove is hot, they won't sit on it anymore, or if they learn that certain fruit or animal or whatever. But we have commentary going on top of it, and that commentary is what actually clouds it on what makes it rigid. Like you may have distaste towards certain food, and then the story comes, oh, I hate it because this is so unhealthy, because someone got poisoned about it, and because that the whole roughness goes with it, the whole identity, this is my, and somebody says, oh yeah, but I think that's quite nice. Oh, you're so wrong. Yes, I'm not going to be hanging out with you. This is happening.
Continuous judgment.
Yeah.
And naming and claiming.
See, you go outside and on a sunny day, and you'll say, I sat in the sun. Did you actually sit in the sun? No. You sat in the sunlight. When your mind said it was in the past. Were you actually in the past? No, you were going back in a memory, bringing a memory into the same now, what you call a memory. So it was always the now.
I like when you say try to move from the now. I really like that. you can't. It's like pushing water uphill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when other people say, try to live in the present, I think what they really mean is that
Attention.
because we got a habit, like you just said,
Yes.
we got a habit of thinking what we did yesterday and what we're going to do tomorrow, and we don't even know where we're standing on today. At this second, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
If you listen to Eckhart, he says, live in the present, but I
Of
think that's what he
course.
means.
Of course,
That-
he means
I
attention.
think he knows that.
Absolutely.
We are in the present always, and there's no way of getting out of it.
Of
but
course.
our minds, the people's minds, always go to the past and the future. What am I going to do tomorrow? What I did yesterday? Blah blah blah. And we don't think of it now. I think that's what they mean. It's like, that's the way I understand it.
Yeah. You're right. Totally. But see, the pointers get a little bit used up, and they need a little bit of a fresh look at it, because the whole mindfulness become a fashion of something to be in the present. But can you really be out of it? Or who are you? Who is there who is in the present? So this sometimes taking the opposite view is not to discard. Nobody's saying that Eckhart Tolle is stupid or is wrong. No way. He's gorgeous. But see, the pointer of being in the now, you cannot ask who you are. You are the now. But at the same time, yes, attention flows somewhere else. Imagination goes somewhere else.
Just a habit.
In the now, you're imagining future or imagining past.
Of course, it's always happening now. It's
Yeah.
either way.
It's not to tear down the pointers, it's to use them. Yeah, you're right, he totally gets it, and he's pointing to the same thing in different words.
Look at that word present. Break it down into pre-sense. Well, we put any sensation or feeling onto it, whatever the sensation is. Pre-sense, what's there then? Doesn't it shut things off straight away?
That's the way you break up the words, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there a limit or end point to the knowing? How deep does the knowing go? Obviously, there's lots of talk here, and it seems like, getting into manifest consciousness, and that's a point where, the eye can kind of expand, experience something referring to manifest consciousness. But, you talk about things like nothingness and emptiness, which is obviously unmanifest.
It's all totality. It's all the one.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's all totality. Whatever limitations you're putting on it, what concepts or limitations can you put on it? Only concepts in the mind, I thought. So there's nothing deeper, nothing, and no limit to anything, but it's only with any limitation we put upon our thoughts.
Because, I think about what Ramana Maharshi had said, and you know, there's a lot of, and even Papaji and stuff, you know, and there's a lot of description of, well, obviously Ramana didn't say anything. He said very little. He transmitted what he transmitted in silence, which is a beautiful thing. But obviously the absolute state of things is an unmanifest state of things. It's outside of this consciousness, or what we can experience as a conscious state. Even if you get the bare basics of consciousness, you know, the flip side of that, and in Zen as well, you know, there's the flip side of that, the point where things actually really turn, where there is nothing there to experience it.
Yeah, you talk about the absolute state. Would there be an absolute if there was anything outside of it?
Sorry?
Would there be an absolute if there was anything outside of it or inside of it? Absolute is absolute,
Yeah,
the totality.
Yeah.
So whichever way it's varied.
Yeah.
Any dividing of it or adding to it, it wouldn't be the absolute.
Yeah. And we can talk about it,
Yeah.
but in terms of the knowing of it. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the knowing. I mean, yeah, we can speculate.
Yeah. That you're knowing right now?
Sorry?
Are you knowing right now?
Am I knowing right now?
Yeah.
There is a knowing. Yes, there is a knowing. Yeah.
A knowing. Is that divided?
Sometimes it can be, and other times it's not.
Pardon?
So sometimes it is divided, other times it's not.
Yeah, but I say when it's the sometimes and other times, it's still the same knowing now, whether it's sometimes or other times, isn't it?
Yeah. But can you know that?
Well, you're knowing right now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm knowing that. I'm knowing now, but
Now.
knowing the absolute.
Well, knowing is the absolute. It's absolute knowing.
There's no division going when you know.
This is lots of like, seems to double back on itself.
Only when you think about it. Because see, when you're actually not thinking, there is a pure knowing, and now sometimes divided, sometimes not divided. The divided, not divided is already a thought. And that thought is already kind of included in the knowing. The knowing is the pure space in which the thought happens.
And that's it, and that's the end point.
Yeah, because when there is no thinking, there is just pure
That was
knowing.
my question. I wanted to know if that was the end point. If that is considered the
And there is only the absolute. There can't be anything outside of it. It wouldn't be the absolute. Take the smallest, minutest thing away from it, it wouldn't be absolute. Add anything onto it, wouldn't be the absolute. And I tell you, in Buddhism, the great perfection, they call the absolute the great perfection. The great perfection is non-conceptual awareness. That awareness is with you right now without putting any thoughts, concepts. You can only divide it or make it bigger or smaller with a thought, feeling or an emotion, which are all thoughts.
And also think that there is something bigger or beyond the non-conceptual awareness. This is also a thought.
Start with that. You are the absolute right now. That's the same, you are the knowing right now. And it's not knowing this, knowing that, or knowing less or more, it's just pure knowing. Being, knowing, and loving to be. That's Chidananda. The Nama Rupa, the name and form, are Maya, illusion. Illusions appear on the absolute, but they are the absolute.
And when without the thought, there's also no one to really question whether there is more or there is an end further. Without the thought, there is absolutely no problem. It's just...
Well, without the identification, I mean, thought's okay, but it's the identification with the thought.
Yeah, it's following the thought of
Yeah.
believing a thought.
Yeah.
Because thought, when it's ignored, it doesn't really...
Doesn't
it's just
matter.
part of the
It's just
the
clouds
picture.
in the sky. Yeah.
So non-conceptual awareness, is that the same as saying awareness without thinking?
Yeah.
Same thing, is it?
Yeah.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Without putting any mental concepts right either.
And it doesn't mean that you have to stop thinking, because non-conceptual awareness is happening whether you are thinking or not thinking, whether there are thoughts or not thoughts. Just like space is happening whether there are objects or not. Silence is happening whether there are sounds or not. So non-conceptual awareness is underlying all the concepts, all the thoughts, stream, commentary, everything. So that's why we say you are already that. You are already that non-conceptual awareness. You are already that sky-like consciousness. But there are clouds, And the trains that you are embarking, whatever, it's just a habit. It's just the habit of the energy to move towards the whatever attracts it. But it doesn't mean that this space in which that movement happens is obscured in any way.
Because
It's just recognizing you as the space, as the train station, rather than the
Trains are just
The-
going by.
yeah.
and
Yeah,
you always are, no matter what's going on, you always are, and that's the truth of your own being.
Yeah, in the book, the Nisargadatta I'm reading, it says, you are the witness, always.
Witnessing,
Yeah.
put the ing on the end, because if you say witness,
It
you're
already
implying
assumes
a
the
witnesser.
entity.
Well, I read the witness.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
are the witness, always.
Yeah, it's a pointer. It's a game
Yeah.
pointer. It's a good pointer. I mean, you know, it's Nisargadatta, and it was pointed by quite a few people who were visiting. I obviously never met Nisargadatta, but Bob did, and few others did, and they all acknowledge that Nisargadatta was using pointers to point particular person who is locked in particular point. So
Yeah,
if the person is locked in the identity with the body, it would put him as, no, you are the witness of the body. But if the person is locked in the idea of a witness, he would say, no, you are the space in which witness appears.
Yes, that's right.
So it depends who he was speaking to. Some pointers would be relevant for you. And yes, at some point, witness is a fantastic idea. But then, who is witnessing the witness? Or where is the witness happening? Or, yes, so it is like a, you know, like one could imagine the journey. It is certain place in the journey where you have to pass, and when you pass it, you know you've passed it. But journey is only seemingly so. There is no journey. But at some point when it's the pointers.
Never left.
Yeah.
To the never left.
Yeah, the pointers are having a certain function. It's like, you know, the thorn to remove the thorn, and then you throw away. Pointer is never the thing. You use it and you throw it away and move on.
If none of it was working, you just told them to go home and do good works. That was one of the early chapters, isn't it?
Yeah. That's a great thing about reading I Am That. It's like sitting in satsang, really.
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting. Huh?
Yeah. It's like sitting in satsang.
A lot of it I don't understand it, but not a lot. Sometimes
keep
I don't
reading.
understand. But then it goes back to understanding, and then maybe not understanding. Sort of goes from one way or another.
Yeah, keep reading it and
Yeah,
things will start to jump out of the
Yeah.
page after a
yeah,
while.
it's good.
When Bob first gave me I Am That, he said, read it, then read it again, then read it again.
Yes.
By the time I'd got through it 3 times, I got it.
So I'm only halfway yet. Got a long way to go.
I only read it
That,
once.
that's just what happened here.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand.
Everybody's
Everybody's different.
Yeah.
It's getting enough from the satsang.
I started reading it too late. It was already too clear. Because, see, if you know what is Nisargadatta actually pointing, then you will see every pointer, because it's just one. It's not that he's pointing at this, 10 different directions. He's always pointing at one, and so does Bob, because there is only one, non-duality, one. So if you know that the pointer is to one, you can very easily unpack it from the end. That's how I happened to read Nisargadatta only recently. I mean, I just didn't happen to do it before. And I just read it in 3 days. Oh my gosh, so simple. Oh, how brilliant. Easy. Every pointer was clear because I know where he's pointing. But you also know because you actually had enough of insights. You know where he's pointing. So now you can unpack it from behind. You know what he is kind of, you know, what is the end direction.
What you said before about him talking to different people, you're right, because every chapter it's somebody else is asking the questions.
Yes.
That's right.
Like I'm on the one yesterday, or he was a doctor. So somebody else is a painter, or somebody, you know, different people asking different questions. Obviously, as you said,
Yeah.
you will answer them accordingly
Yeah.
Yes,
to,
to
you
where
know,
they are.
to their understanding, to where they are. Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that.
And also for the same reason, for me, I was coming back to Bob's meeting for a couple of years, and then I booked up individual session, and that was the end of the game. So because he was actually taking me from where I am, the answers, the questions, and the guidance was totally coiled down to where was, you know, where I was locked or stuck. That's why it's wonderful to be in a group and to listen to all the people expressing and discussing and so on. But it's absolutely priceless to call him or speak to him one-on-one and really address the individual stuckness.
With the time thing, Tony, we assume that time implies movement, which means there's a comparison. So, but if you actually really look at that, all that's being compared from what is actual is something that's not actually there. So if I take my phone, we say, okay, it's located in that space, that point of time. It's located there. Okay. Then I move it to there. So okay, it's now located there. Compared to what? Compared to a memory or an idea that was once there.
So everything goes back to your memories.
It's just time is really based on a function that we use, which we call comparison.
Yeah.
No static point anymore.
And comparisons are odious.
And you can see that little example that I just gave you. Watch that for yourself during the course of the day.
That's a good analogy.
Just watch it. You know, like it's all based on a comparison. You know, how do I know I'm here today? Well, because I've got a memory of yesterday.
What was yesterday?
What's that? It's always just an idea. The actual is always present. The actual is always here now. And the only time we come out of that is when we compare the here now with the nothing. That's not here now. Yeah, and you can see that. Like you can literally see that.
I love what John Lennon says. Time is a concept by which we measure our pain. You know, it's all related to a me, to the past, to the future, and it's all in time, it's all conceptual. You know, because right here, right now, there's no time, there's no me, there's no past, there's no future.
Yeah.
It's purely an idea. Purely just an idea. Literally an idea. Bob says it all the time, you know. Try and go back and live tomorrow. Or try and move into the future and live into the future from here.
You can think about it, but you can't live it.
Yeah, you can only...
Oh, I understand that 100%. Like, you know, everything is whatever. Even if you think of the past, you're thinking of it now.
Right.
Yeah.
So the idea of comparison is outside of presence. It's outside of right here, right now. What would one be comparing the absolute presence or the right here, right now with? What would you compare that with?
I don't know.
An idea. Just an idea, mental concept, just an idea. That's all. And you can see that if you look.
Leaves it as it is. Unmodified, uncorrected. No preference, no partiality, no comparison. Just is. Time. We just talked about no
Speaking
time.
of time,
We
Time
just,
and no
yes, there is no time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.